So hello, welcome to ChamberLIVE. Today sees the return of our Health and Safety Forum, which is our specialist group for health and safety professionals and anyone in a business who has a health and safety role. That group is sponsored by Intersolia. They provide customised solutions for managing chemical health and safety in an environmentally friendly way. They've been doing so since 1999 and operating in various territories, including Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Serbia, and of course, UK. We'll hear from Tim from Intersolia shortly, and then we'll hand over to Janet Nerenberg and Colin McCall, Head of Health and Safety and Health and Safety Advisor, respectively, at the Senator Group, with their experiences and learnings through COVID-19. The views expressed in this seminar don't necessarily represent the views of the East Lancs Chamber of Commerce, but all facts were believed to be correct at the time of recording, which is the 5th of August 2020. Now, on to our first speaker. We'll introduce Tim. Tim O'Donnell has over 20 years HSE management experience spanning numerous industries, including construction, refurbishment, manufacturing, distribution, and facilities management. As a health and safety professional, he spent several years as a customer of Intersolia and a user of their cost management solutions before joining their team and becoming CEO of Intersolia UK. Now, let's hand over to Tim. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Simon. If you can start the slideshow for us, that would be great. So as Simon said a moment ago, Intersolia is here to help our customers and you guys, should you wish, to manage your cost requirements. And it's based with our iChemistry solution. It's a web-based tool along with a mobile app and our extensive team of consultants to support that. Next slide, please, Simon. The iChemistry solution, some of you will be familiar with it, as we have a few customers up in the Northwest. It basically provides support on providing your inventory and supporting your inventory of what you have, where you use it, and how much you can use, or how much you do use. It has a risk assessment module which is comprehensive, and it encourages you to carry out activity-based risk assessments where you can combine the use of several chemicals into one activity. So you're not doing a cost assessment per se, you're doing a standard risk assessment on an activity which uses chemicals, and our system identifies all the risks associated with each chemical that you use. And it also provides automatically, without you having to do anything, the critical safety information for your employees by way of a workplace instruction. We also have information on storage and safe disposal of all your chemicals. It provides substitution for assistance in substitution, making your decisions on what you can use in place of hazardous materials by way of a side-by-side comparison. It obviously is compliant with current UK legislation, and we can also provide you with a complete list of every chemical that you have on site which is considered to be a carcinogen, mutanogen, toxic reproductive, allergen. If it's on any restrictions or prohibitions lists that you or your customers may use, such as California Proposition 65 or REACH, of course. And it can also support your purchasing policies and procedures. Next slide, please, Simon. So how much work do you do at the moment? A massive amount in order to be compliant with COSH, as you are all probably aware. You've got to constantly monitor legislation. You've got to regularly adjust your register of hazardous substances based on any changes to legislation. You've got to monitor and update all your safety data sheets. So when there's a change from your supplier, they send you a new safety data sheet. You have to do a side-by-side comparison with the old one to find out where the changes have occurred and how that impacts on your business. We can provide you with that service as a side-by-side comparison where changes are shown in red in very simple schematic. And it also lists all of the risk assessments and activities that you use that chemical for on site. So you can then make a very informed decision as to whether you need to review all of your risk assessments. you have to carry out your risk assessment process. You're constantly reviewing risk assessments based on activity changes, process changes, changes to safety data sheets or legislation. You have to prepare, update, and distribute workplace instructions based on your risk assessments. And I say we do that automatically for you as part of our iChemistry tool. You also have to prepare and maintain the procedures for substitution, which our system does for you as well. So we can provide you with that. And obviously, documentation and any additional regulations that need to be considered. So it takes about 3 or 5 hours, somewhere between that. It depends on the complexity of the material you're using and your activity per chemical per year. So it's a lot of work. Next slide, please, Simon. And of course, iChemistry does it all for you. I mean, the thing that you have to do is provide us with an inventory of your chemicals, and you have to carry out the risk assessments, although we can do that for you if we come onto site and carry it out. But iChemistry, it's a proven all-in-one solution, providing you and your employees with the confidence in knowing that your chemicals are stored, used, and disposed of safely. And it's all about protecting you and your employees. The responsibility and completion of all external tasks is carried out by us, which includes the full management of all of your safety data sheets. So we contact all of your suppliers. We make sure all of your safety data sheets are the latest versions that your suppliers have issued on your iChemistry system. That massively reduces your workload to a minimum, and of course it decreases your costs. And from day one, you'll benefit from the expertise in saving time. And in doing so, you'll be able to focus on those more essential core business activities. Next slide, please, Simon. So as I said at the beginning, we are very proud to be sponsoring this Health and Safety Forum. We are here to help. If you need to pick our brains, please do so. Depending on how much of the system you have, it's very much a pick and mix system. We can provide you with a cost management system for less than the price of a cup of coffee a day. So if you need more information, please look at the slides. Thank you. Thanks, Simon.
Great, thank you, Tim. I'm just conscious that the YouTube video started after you showed us your dog. So if you want the dogs to sort of, you know, get their appearance, then feel free to introduce them at this point.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll decline that.
All right, okay, fine. And then in which case, I'll thank you again and then move on to our next speakers. The last 5 months have been, and it's a word that's been bandied around a lot, hasn't it, but unprecedented. We've had lockdown, workplace closures, furlough, social distancing, the new normal. They're all terms that, well, none of us had used prior to March. As responsible persons in business, we've had a lot to get to grips with from a health and safety point of view, but anyone that thinks it's just about sanitizer and stickers is sadly mistaken. So what's the journey been like in one of our leading manufacturers here in East Lancashire, Senator Group? How have they responded? What's the impact been not only on the business, but on the health and safety professionals that have been leading the company's response to COVID-19? Well, let's find out. We're going to meet Colin McCall. Colin's worked for Senator Group for 23 years, moved into health and safety in 2008. Prior to that, he was in the machine shop. He's got a good working knowledge of all the machinery and processes and equipment at Senator. When the health and safety opportunity became available, he moved to the dark side, took his NEBOSH general certificate, and he now looks after the engineering site in Blackburn and the seating site at Huncourt, each of which have different work activities. Janet has worked at the Senator Group just for the last 15 months following a move from Warburton's, making furniture, as you can imagine, quite different to making bread. She misses the crumpets, I'm told. She's got 20 years experience of working in health and safety across various sectors, and acknowledges that even after all this time, she's still learning and every day is different. She's been a regular attendee on our ChamberLIVE sessions as well. So nice to see her having to contribute to this one. Janet worked hard to achieve chartered status within IOSH in 2011, proud to be an IOSH member. She started out as a civil servant, a full-time mum, working within a purchasing team and as a senior buyer before moving into health and safety. So let's say good morning and hand over first of all, Janet, over to you, Janet.
Sorry, good morning everybody. So thanks for that introduction, Simon, really good to hear. I didn't think back in March that I would be presenting over Zoom to anybody, let alone at the Chamber. We had planned to do a session on site in April at Senator Group. We were going to look at our safety reps and the journey that we've taken them on, and behavioural safety and all of that good stuff. That all came to an end, as we all know, and what a crazy 4 months it's been. Colin and I have been in work throughout. We actually are still working. We've both decided to do this presentation from home to avoid distractions and other things. It looks like Colin's been distracted just now. So the purpose of this presentation this morning is not to say, hey, look at us, look at how great we are, look at what we've been doing, and isn't this fantastic, and look at the Senator Group. There will be an element of that in what we're doing this morning, but it's as much about saying, you know what, this has been real. None of us have dealt with a pandemic before, so all the skills as a health and safety professional to enable you to do your job really have been pushed to the fore, challenged in ways that we never thought we would be challenged. We have worked on things that we never thought we would look at. And we are going to share some of the stuff that we've done with you this morning. And some of it you might think, you know what, that's great, we're going to steal that, and what a good idea. There might also be an opportunity at the end for you to share with us some of the things that you've put in place, some of the things that you've done that we might be able to share from you. So if there's anything you feel that you'd like to understand more about, please shout up at the end so we can arrange to have a chat offline. So Simon, if you wouldn't mind starting the slides now. And this is our story. This is Colin and I, our story. Next slide, please. So we are using a script as well. Colin and I have got a little bit of a script that you might see us looking at. And the reason why we've got a script is because anybody who knows me knows I like to talk. And I can talk for England. And when I get on the subject that I'm passionate about, and actually that is health and safety, then I need to be reined in sometimes. So I've got a script, so if I'm looking away, please just bear with us. Early stages, prior to lockdown, what was it that we needed to look at? Well, do you know what, in the early stages, we were hearing things that were going on and it seemed quite easy. It didn't feel that serious. We were a business that were open. There was nothing to say that we shouldn't be in work. And we were implementing things, that guidance that seemed quite obvious, you know, advising on the importance of hand washing and sanitizer, which obviously isn't just about that. Advising on covering mouth and nose when coughing or sneezing. You think that that would be really clear advice and that most people would understand that, just being a human being and living in this world. But actually what we've realised is through this is that how many people don't even appreciate that coughing and sneezing and covering your mouth and nose is important. Then things started to look a bit more serious. Our board pulled together and they started to look at, you know, how is this going to impact on us? And some of our key personnel were removed from site at this stage because we appreciate we need some people to be available through the lockdown or through the pandemic that the business couldn't function without. We then decided that we'd start to check temperatures of people that were feeling unwell. So again, this is all before the guidance for people to stay at home. We bought some thermometers. Great, we thought this is easy, we'll take the temperatures, so people who were feeling unwell, we'd take the temperatures. What we didn't realise is that in the early stages, the thermometers that we bought were actually for industrial purpose, so we were getting some really spurious temperature results. I think at one stage I was suffering from severe hypothermia and should have been either dead or comatose, so we realised that that wasn't practical. We bought some more, and we have got the ability to take temperatures when we come on site, but we've realised again that that is not quite as simple as everybody says because of the numbers of people that we've got, having somebody available to take temperatures, etc. So again, whilst we're doing it for some people, we're not doing it for everybody. And we introduced some social distancing, and again, quite easy you would think, and not too difficult for us in the early stages. Next slide, please, Simon. So then this bombshell hit. So we were sat at home, it was a Monday evening, and I heard on the news that lockdown. We're all familiar with what Boris said in his address on that particular evening, that we should only leave our homes if we were shopping for basic necessities, one form of exercise a day, any medical need, and travelling to and from work, but only where it was absolutely necessary. So that evening, until quite late in the evening, I was on the telephone to our HR team, I was on the telephone to my team, and essentially I was saying to them, look, stay at home. You've got work that you can be doing from home, so for now, until I know something different, stay at home, work from home, and I will regroup when we know a little bit more. And I went into work the next day. We had to make some really tough decisions. So at that stage, I was asked to look at my team, understand who it was that we needed to keep in the business, and who it was that we could furlough or could work from home. And then I had a new starter. So I had a new starter, Luke. He'd only been with us 7 days at that stage, and I had to put him on furlough. Luke is currently back in the business, which is really nice, but he started his probationary period again. Andrew, another of our colleagues, is on the call this morning. He has a wife that works at Preston Hospital and children who suddenly were not going to school. So Andrew was an obvious choice. We put Andrew on furlough. So Colin, I'm afraid, drew the short straw, and Colin ended up remaining in work and working with me through the duration. Colin, over to you.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, we looked at the news and everything, and it was all to do with China. They're all wearing masks, and nobody thought anything of that. We're used to seeing that in China. But then it came over to this country in March, and then everybody, it became the fear of the unknown. It's closer to home, it's affecting everybody. We have to adapt to working with minimal staff, even though we were still open, and as Janet said, others were on furlough. But people get looking to us, asking the questions, what are you going to do about this in the workplace? Are you going to send us home? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And we couldn't answer everything. We were following government guidelines. But we had to be honest with them. I think that was the critical bit, being honest and saying, well, we don't have all the answers, but we do follow the government guidelines. We have to liaise with managers as well as staff, and they're all confused with it. They're all fearing the unknown. And at times it made it difficult to understand what we needed to do. We also were still dealing with the normal day-to-day health and safety activities, doing a normal roles, looking at accidents, risk assessment, keeping contact with the safety reps, having a safety meetings with social distancing and over Teams. Very different to what we normally do, really hard to do. Over to you, Janet.
Please, Simon. So we knew from the early stages there was a lot of confusion on site. We knew that our board were talking about, should we keep the business open? Should we close? Should we furlough everybody? And I'm actually quite proud to say that the business made the good decision that we would remain open, because the guidance back in March wasn't that we had to close. We were an essential business. The anxiety that everybody was feeling, and I must admit, even for myself, the early days I was getting in my car and the streets were really, really quiet. And the only other people that I saw moving around in Clitheroe, where I lived, was my neighbour who I knew worked at Burnley Hospital, and one other lady that I knew was a nurse at the hospital. Other than that, I've never seen the roads really so quiet. So there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of people not sure about what they should be doing. Should they be at work? Should they be at home? Should they have been put on furlough? But obviously we can't make furniture from a home environment, and we can't manage health and safety for people in a manufacturing environment from our homes. Whilst there's some stuff we can do at home, you need to be on site and we need to be a presence. So the business supplied the work to make the furniture for the NHS Nightingale hospitals. So we have our Teal Healthcare division. That's core to the Senate group and part of what we still continue to do. But suddenly the increase in the demand for furniture for all the hospitals went through the roof, and that actually enabled us to keep all our other sites open. And everybody that was in work then was making furniture that we knew was going to go into the NHS. A lot of anxiety disappeared. It almost felt then like everybody took a deep breath and said, you know what? We are now part of the bigger cause. We are doing something that is fundamentally a requirement within this pandemic. We are doing something that's high value. We're doing something that's really important. And we felt that our work was valued. And I think that fulfills a fundamental need in most people to feel like they're contributing, feel like we're contributing to the common cause. We all got letters saying that we were now key workers. it was important that what we were doing, and you can see just some of the pictures there, really, really proud to support the NHS. At this time within the business, we had a limited number of people on site, so it was really easy to do the social distancing. In the offices that were previously really busy areas with every banker desk full with people, was suddenly one person on a banker desks. And so social distancing then was really easy, and it felt quite comfortable, and it felt quite nice. So compliance in those early days was generally very, very good. Colin, over to you.
Yeah, like Janet said, at this time when there was less people on site, we put a lot of control measures in place, i.e. segregation, one-way systems. We looked at the emergency evacuation, how we'd do that, and social distancing, closed the canteens and just did sandwiches, and people ate at the workstations. Third up for me was the social distancing. People were used to being with people and working close, and it was hard for them to get used to keeping the distance. Even just a conversation, you know, you walk up to someone and then you realise can't get right up to them, and it was difficult. But it's normal activity, it's human behaviour to do that. So forgetting the rule was something that happened quite a lot, but we just had to try and change that culture and change that habit. And changing an habit, as you know, takes quite a while. But suddenly behavioural safety become as if not more important than physical safety. So it was quite difficult to manage it as time got going.
Yeah, so next slide please there, Simon. So we had a lot to think about. As I say, we've been operational throughout. We've been a working business. We've had all our manufacturing sites have been open with people on them. So we weren't just focusing on the COVID stuff, although obviously that was really, really important. And what we started out doing in the first instance with our COVID-19 risk assessment was actually just documenting almost on a daily basis the changes that we were making, the things that we were introducing. That document still exists and has become a bit of a timeline of events. It's quite nice to look back on and realise how much we've actually done and how much we've changed, because I think that it's one thing that we forget about. You've never done enough and you always feel like, you know, maybe you should have done something else, but actually we've done a hell of a lot in the last 4 months. So there were other things that we needed to think about. We needed to think about building occupancy. So a lot of our staff and some of our maintenance teams were on furlough. Did we actually have the right skill sets on site to interrogate the fire panel if we had a fire alarm activation? Did we know how we were going to handle our fire assembly areas if we did need to evacuate site? So all of that good stuff, we reviewed our fire risk assessments and redocumented some of the essential information. What it did highlight for me was that some of the key holder information that we did have was incorrect and it hadn't been looked at for some time. So, you know, COVID-19 has also facilitated it and enabling us to bring some of our stuff up to date. Colin's going to talk through some of the stuff now from a first aid and occupational health perspective.
Yeah, as we're saying, we have to look at different things. We're put on furlough, but were people looking to see if there were key people, i.e. first aiders? Did we have enough cover on site? Which we did, we were quite good at that. But what I did find out talking to the staff on the shop floor is they knew there were first aiders on site, but they didn't know which department they were in. They didn't know if they're on furlough or not. They didn't know, so we had to do a bit of work on that. So we created a brief guidance for the first aiders as well. How would they treat people in the pandemic, because they're going to be at risk. So we had to look at CPR. Do CPR? Well, they can do it without doing mouth to mouth, but they had to wear a mask, they had to wear gloves, and they had to put a mask on the casualty or the injured party. So we had to work together. It was quite a lot of work to do and getting it right. We also had occupational health, where a risk assessment completed to enable us to continue with the health and surveillance, albeit in an altered format. We did questionnaires, and rather than have face-to-face consultations, we did it over the telephone very much like the doctors are doing at the moment. A number of employees were reporting symptoms of stress and anxiety, which we get that, we understand why. As I said, it's the fear of the unknown. To stop doing the respiratory checks for obvious reasons, and these are still on hold at the moment. We're doing what we can do. It is a challenge. A lot of our service providers were on furlough, so we needed people to come in do our statutory inspections and stuff. We had to produce a risk assessment to allow that. For us, a lot of our inspections weren't due between May and now, so we've been okay, but we have got a new system in place. We don't allow them on site. If they've got any symptoms, they've got to have a temperature check and they've got to go through an induction before we allow them on.
Okay, so I mean, I've realised at this point, but we did have a little question set earlier on one of the slides, just asking, quite interested in knowing of all the health and safety professionals we've got on the team, how many of you were furloughed throughout the pandemic, or were furloughed to start with, and were you closed? So if you were furloughed and your business stayed open. So again, if you just want to have a quick look at that and reply, because I think we're interested in understanding how many fit into each of those categories. Simon, I don't know whether you...
Yeah, that's, we've got 76% people voted currently. We're just hanging on for the last couple. I'll give you 5 seconds. Full house, there we go. There's your results.
All right, wow, so that is really good that actually, because what we were hearing early days is that a lot of health and safety professionals, where the businesses were still open, they were put on furlough, which didn't quite make sense to me. You know, I know we furloughed a couple of our people, but we still had a cohort on site for the numbers that we had, so that's really interesting. And that just shows that I need a script, because I missed that, even though I've had my script in front of me. So next bit, Simon, if we move on. You know, we've just put that on there. Phew, you know, crikey, this was a hell of a lot for us to deal with, and a hell of a lot for us to deal with when actually I was feeling quite anxious at times. Throughout the early days of the pandemic, I had my son who works at home base. He was on furlough, so he was at home, and he was struggling a little bit with his mental health, struggling a little bit being bored and twiddling his thumbs. We had to make the decision for his girlfriend, who sort of lived between our house and her own house, where was she going to live, and she came and lived with us. You know, I was lucky enough to have another body came into our house. My husband was put on furlough, so at one stage I was the only person going into work. I was the only person getting up and leaving home in the morning, and I felt quite guilty about that from time to time. You know, so all of that was going on. We were then heading into work, and as Colin says, we were becoming the counsellor, the go-to person, the HR support, all of those good stuff, and everybody was looking to us to lead, to guide, to support, and actually this was really new to us as well. So I think the resilience that health and safety professionals generally have, just by default for being in that profession, really came to the fore, and actually being in work helped with the anxiety. I think if I'd been at home, I might not have been in as good a place as I am now, because being in work keeps you busy, and everybody knows that being busy is a good thing to be. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, Simon. So some really ad hoc, you know, a little busy picture there, but some of the controls that we implemented, and it's fair to say, probably like a lot of businesses in the early days, a lot of the stuff that we put in was a bit Heath Robinson. So Robert Mustoe said he didn't like that. It was a bit Heath Robinson, could we change it? But interestingly, even in these early stages of us trying to do some of this stuff, we used every bit of tape, every laminator pouch. Hand sanitizer was really difficult to get hold of in quantities. Sanitizing wipes were difficult to get hold of in quantities because a lot of businesses had shut down. A lot of suppliers were shut down and we couldn't find it. We also had, Colin and I became part of the purchasing team, because people that would normally do the buying with incentive for this sort of stuff were not available. So we were ringing around, and it's amazing how much time that takes just to find somebody who can supply some of this stuff. So we then started to work on making these a little bit smarter when Robert Mustoe said, look, you know what, we supply high-end furniture, we are a branded product, and we want our business and our sites to look great. So for me, that was fantastic. He was really supportive, and he gave us a project to work on to say, look, everything that you're doing, it's the right stuff, but we want it to look smart. So the next few slides are just for us to share some of the things that we've put in place at Senator. You can have a look at them, you might like them, you might have some other stuff that you can share with us. But the next few slides, if we can move on, please, Simon, we'll show you some of the things we've got in place. So we've got signage up now. So when you enter any of our Senator sites, there's signage, there's a cleaning station with hand sanitizer, with some instructions. So do not enter if you're feeling unwell. Believe it or not, we are still getting people even now that are coming to the site that then say, but I don't feel very well. And I think, again, that's human nature, human behaviour. So we're managing that at the moment. As of today, we still have not yet within the business had anybody test positive. So that's a really, really positive outcome. We're hoping that continues. We've gone for the 2 metre social distancing signage on the floor, but we haven't gone mad with it. We've not put them out at every 2 metres. We've put them out at key points, just so that we can show and remind people. And, you know, when you put something on the floor, they are starting to look quite worn now. And maybe at some point we might need to replace them and buy some more. So next slide, please, Simon. So we needed to think about our meeting rooms. And initially my thought was, well, remove the chairs. Let's get rid of some of the chairs, and then people can't sit together. And again, it was Robert that said, you know what? They're probably going to push the chairs together anyway. So if you do leave them there, people will follow what is their normal behaviours. So he actually came up with this idea to put a bag over some of the chairs, which they look a bit peculiar, but the two things that benefits there: it keeps everybody sat apart, it keeps the chairs that we have in our nice smart meeting rooms clean and tidy, and it's just a reminder for everybody to say, look, don't sit on me, you need to be keeping that socially distance. And we've got the desktop signage that you can see there with the meeting room guidance. We've made it everybody's responsibility. So our meeting protocol is that avoid it if you can, use Teams if you can. If you still need to get together on site because we are still operational, we might need to use that, then you can use a meeting room. But if you're booking a meeting room, you need to make sure that you don't break the rules, that you do not have more than 50% occupancy, and that you clean and sanitize before and after use. Next slide, please, Simon. So again, we had to think about our canteen areas. We've relaxed our rules for eating. We've allowed people to sit neat at their desks. We've got wipes galore everywhere so that people can wipe down and sanitize before and after. Some of our breakout areas, these were the areas where people were naturally migrating to, and we found that they would stand across the table face to face looking at each other and having a chat, and actually it's only a metre distance. So what we've done is put signage on the tables, remove some of the chairs in these instances so that people can't sit across from each other, and again, signage everywhere, reminding people to sanitize before they use. So we've got a lot of shared photocopiers, a lot of shared printers. We've stuck little labels on everywhere. You'd be amazed how many people still do not do that, and how people who have been in work throughout still have not quite got into that habit. But we're actively encouraging it, and the more we're moving on now, and the more that people are seeing us doing it, the more people are adopting it as a habit, the better we are getting at it. What you can't see probably behind the pictures of all of us there is, I call those a wet floor sign. Those are our mobile signage that our contractors we use for our install teams, so they can take them if they're working on installations on site, and they can position them so that it's just that reminder for people to keep distance. And we bought some of the high-vis waistcoats, which we really like, that stay 2 meters apart. So Nick Brooke, one of our logistics guys there, happily modelling that one for us at the bottom. And if you could move on, Simon, next slide, and Colin, over to you. Oh, sorry, we've got a Zoom question at the end of this, Simon, so don't let me move on without the next Zoom question.
Yeah, whilst we already had a risk assessment documenting all these controls that we have in place, this document that came out from the government guidance was created, enabled us to complete another risk assessment using it as a base. our risk assessment follows the structure of this document, and it helped us confirm that we did have gaps in our own risk assessment, but we was able to fill them. So each section of our new risk assessment is a section from each page of this. So every section has a line in our risk assessment, and this allows us to be on track. It's a living document, so it's updated regularly. As you know, it's not easy with the government keep changing stuff, but Janet's very good at keeping it up to date.
Okay, so I think on this one, Simon, we wanted to know a Zoom question just to understand how many, so there's lots of these guidance documents out there, how many other others have used these and how useful did you find them? Okay, interesting. As I said, I found it very useful. I found it useful in terms of following the guidance that was in the document and actually using each line in the risk assessment to document the process and the way through. And as Colin said, it allows us to identify where there was some gaps in what we were doing. And for me, when we, if we were to be audited or whatever, we can easily link the two documents together to show. So our risk assessment's a live document, as Colin says, and I'm almost on a daily, if not weekly basis, looking at that, updating it and keeping it live. Next slide, please, Simon. So returning to work, you know, we did have 50% of our people who were on furlough, and returning to work was on my radar, because initially we thought maybe 2 or 3 weeks and we're going to have people back. So I wanted to look at this right from the early days of the pandemic, and I spoke to our team. Initially their thoughts were, no, it's too early, Janet, don't worry about that, we're not going to be bringing people back yet, just carry on doing what you're doing. But when I get something in my head that I feel is right, then I can't leave it alone. So I started to work on a document for things that we need to consider for people returning to work, because it's going to be a changed workplace. You know, those of us that have been there throughout are getting used to the changes because they're happening on a daily basis and we can see what's happening. But people coming back in, the workplace can feel and look quite different. So HR did come on board very, very quickly, realised that what I was doing was right. The basic document that I put together grew. We worked on it together and we've now got a return to work process. We have a telephone consultation form that before we bring anybody back is to have a conversation with them. How are you feeling? You know, have you got any concerns? What to do when they return back to work and where they need to go and where they need to report to, rather than just turning back up at work and going to where their normal workstation is, so that we can reinduct them. And we've got the reinduction, the sign-off document. The most important thing for me, it was about the consistency. So regardless of whether you're coming back to site at head office or at Blackburn or at the home court sites, that we were dealing with everybody in the same manner, giving everybody the same information, and getting rid of some of the fears for people returning to work. So Colin's alluded to it earlier. We do have people who are presenting with anxiety. We've probably had the biggest number in the last few months of consultations with our occupational health are through stress and anxiety. I've been busy completing some stress risk assessments. So something that you might see once or twice over a 12-month period has become more than normal. And we're working with those people to try and support them. You know, the guidance today that's just come out for Blackburn with Darwin for those shielded patients who have remained at home is that they're strongly recommended that they continue to shield because of the increase in numbers. So there's all of that stuff that we've done in the background, and you know, it's important, but it's helping us to manage and navigate our way through. So Colin, over to you on the new normal.
Yeah, the new normal, more challenging than it were in the early days. Less people on site, a bit easier to control. But even their habits started changing and going back to the old ways. And then you've got all the new people coming back into work. They're full of anxiety. Is it safe to come back? Should we be coming back? And we've got to try and answer all those questions. But what we found is that we still had to re-educate them all as they were coming back. We've seen that putting stickers and wipes out and asking people to use them isn't quite as obvious to many as it should be. The health and safety of COVID, please, but reminding people on a daily basis of their responsibility, being part of the new normal, explaining to them that this is going to last a while. It's not just a couple of weeks, it's going to be a few months at least. We found some have been worked throughout with more anxious because all of a sudden they've got less space. It's harder for them to manage. And those coming back were getting in the area, their dance space, if you will. So we had to put a lot of rules in to enforce it. And it was a real challenging balancing act to try and keep everyone happy.
Yeah, I think Senator have done what we do best. We have got a new range of furniture out that we're looking at doing, which is Define My Space. So not a sales pitch at all, but it's one of the things that we have implemented in our office spaces, that we've now got screens. And there are pros and cons to that. People are now working to some extent in little boxes, but it enables us to keep that social distancing, and the screens have got fabrics on, etc., that are microbiological, kill viruses, etc. So that's not great. It's taking some getting used to, but we're doing everything we can to ensure that people are safe. We've also got some of our sites where wearing a face covering has become the normal. So our Teal site, for example, we really struggle with the social distancing because the nature of the site is quite small. In the early stages of lockdown, wearing the face coverings was, a challenge for everybody. It's now their new normal. And when you go onto that site wearing a face covering, they all do it, they all comply, and nobody complains, because they're accepting that it's there to protect them, protect their colleagues, and to keep the business running, which is really, really important nowadays. So next slide, please, Simon. So some of the things that helped us during the challenging times, I mean, for me, keeping in contact with the team, sharing what we were doing, making them still feel part of the team. So Zoom became part of our new normal. We had weekly catch-ups, which I know Andrew has said since he's come back to work were really important to him, sitting at home, not maybe getting information, not understanding what's going on site, and feeling important to be part of the team. Colin's got a great sense of humour, so he's really kept us going throughout this. So if you just click the next two images, and the next one, Simon, when we opened our Zoom calls, quite often Colin sat there with his mask and his goggles on and what have you. You know what? It just makes you laugh at the start of the call. It's humorous, makes us laugh, breaks the ice, and we can then relax again and start and do what we need to do next, which is communicate with each other, let each other know what's going on, let them know that we're there for each other. Not listening to the news for us is not an option. Not being able to ignore what's going on is not an option. We are the ones that people are coming to, and as I say, it's not been great for us, but having the support, and as I say, Colin has got a wicked sense of humour. For me, has been an absolute godsend at times during the last 4 months, so he needs to keep that up, really, really good. For me, midpoint, it was probably a Monday morning. I'd got, my son was going back to work, so he was anxious about going back to work. I wasn't feeling the best, and I'm not saying I had COVID-19 or anything, but I hadn't slept particularly well, and I came into site, and as was my normal routine, I picked the phone up and have a conversation with Colin. And Colin just said to me, "Are you okay today?" And I went, "You know what? No, I'm not. I'm not okay. I'm feeling it. I'm struggling a little bit. I'm going to hang up the phone, Colin, and I'm going to come back to you." So I hung up the phone. I went and sat in a quiet, darkened room and had a little chat with myself. Pull yourself together, girl, all that stuff that we do. For me, it was just the fact that he had noticed, that he had heard something in my voice that was different to how I was normally being. Colin and I have worked together so closely over these last 4 months. We've got to know each other very, very well. And I was great. I was absolutely fine. I had 5 minutes, half an hour, I had a brew, and then I phoned him back and he said, "You sound much better." I cannot tell you how much that just somebody asking, "Are you okay?" and actually asking that in a manner that you know that they mean it has an impact on people. So we've heard such a lot through the pandemic, being kind, understanding, all of that good stuff. When it is done and it is meant, and it is heartfelt, then how big and how valuable that is. So, you know, Colin knows how much I value that conversation that we had. And I think it's fair to say that we've been there for each other throughout. Really, really important, because we are human beings as well. And whilst we're dealing with everybody else being anxious, we're dealing with all the questions from everybody else, what we need to understand is that actually it's okay for us to not feel okay from time to time. So it made a huge difference. We're still on a roller coaster. It's still there. We're still working through it, but fantastic. Colin, if we move on, Simon, there's a couple of images. You might recognise that face there. Colin, over to you.
Yeah, one thing Janet's always done for me is encourage me to join webinars and have a look what's going on in the health and safety world. But during all this COVID-19, it's been good to be able to come onto the Chamber of Commerce or on IOSH webinars and listen to other people in the same profession as us and what they're doing and how they're coping, and just touching base really. It has helped us, it's given us confidence that what we're doing it, and it's good. And we pinch ideas from these, and like people might get good ideas from us today. So it really does work, and I would encourage anyone to join as many webinars as they can and gather information.
I think as well, for me, it's around accepting that we don't have all the answers. As Simon alluded to earlier on, I've had 20 years experience of health and safety, but we all know it's such a massive field and there is so much for us to try and understand. One of the things I've probably not been particularly good at in the past is ringing somebody up and saying, can you help with this? Or getting in contact with somebody and saying, look, you've got experience of this, how can you support us? One thing I've learned through this pandemic is actually that's okay. And that it's great to do that because we don't know all the answers. So people like Chris Nagg from IOSH absolutely has been a fantastic support. I know Chris can't make it onto the webinar this morning, but he'll me reference him when he listens back to it. But really, really important because we still had some of the stuff that was going on within work that we needed to deal with and manage. And knowing that there is a wider network of health and safety people out there, I think is really, really important and became even more valuable to us during this time than ever before. And if you can move on, Simon.
Okay, so on the 21st of July, we received a phone call from the HSE informing us that they wanted to come on one of our sites. Turned out it was one of my sites at Blackburn, the engineering site. But they were coming with the expressed the purpose of looking at COVID-19 and where we're at with it, what we're doing. They said we haven't got enough to deal with at the moment. We had to meet with them. We all know what a visit from the HSE can be like. It can be stressful. We all know Cameron came onto site with a colleague from their communications department, Corey. Requested permission to take photos on site. It was triggered by the spike in Blackburn and Darwin COVID virus. I explained the scope of her visit, and as all HSE do, indicated that if she saw something of concern, she would be raising it. Our initial meeting with her was held outside in the car park, wide open, 2-metre distancing. Anxiety levels were heightened at this point as no one likes the HSE visiting their sites. Because of the fee for intervention, it's always in the back of your mind. Even Leona and Corey seemed a little anxious. And we felt like we had to demonstrate for them on a personal level, as well as in a role of HSE, that we were managing everything that we should. It went really well, to be honest. A couple of minor verbal comments. These were quite small. One of them, we had a tea towel in the canteen and they advised us remove the tea towel and put paper towels there. We had another one, some tables, just changed the signage on them. Comical one for us was the men's urinal. It's one of the long urinals that people share. And she said, I would advise you put a sign up. My comment were, what do you want us to put up? once we don't want everyone being in the same pot. She said, no, I think it'd be better if you put one person only, which we did, and they were quite happy. Again, using the humour, it did help the visit, and they're happy with the visit as we are. Good result.
Yeah, so it was a really, really good visit, and obviously the HSE are out and about at the moment. They are doing COVID-19 visits throughout the area because of the spike in numbers. So I would just say if you're open for business, be prepared. What surprised me was the fact that they seemed really anxious when they arrived on site. It didn't feel as though they were relaxed, and it was up to Colin and I to almost make them feel that we had things in control. And the fact that we were quite chilled about it and relaxed about it enabled them to have a really positive visit. So it was really good and a good outcome for our Blackburn site. So COVID-19, it continues to be a priority. You know, in the early days in March, we were all hoping that it would have gone by now and that we'd be back to more normal things, but it's still a priority focus for all of us on a personal level as well as in our health and safety roles for the Senator Group. So the challenge for us now is that we don't get complacent. We have got people who've been on site throughout the duration, and you know, quite rightly, some of them are getting fed up with the rules, or we want to go back to normal, don't want to wear a face covering, do I really need to wipe things clean, all of that good stuff. And actually we're saying, yeah, you do. We need to continue with it, and you need to develop it as your new habit because it's not going away anytime soon. And the last thing we want is for the business to have to close because we have a spike or we have a cluster of infections. So we've had a couple of employees who've experienced symptoms. We've had people with family members that they're concerned about who've been tested. The testing process in this area seems to be really good just now in that we can arrange to get tests and get them done fairly quickly. So again, our frequently asked questions with our return to work documentation, our COVID-19 protocols for HR and for our managers' guidance is another document that we are updating almost on a weekly and a daily basis as the guidance changes. So again, we've seen recently that the isolation period has been changed from 7 to 10 days. So again, that impacts on the documentation that we've got because we need to make sure that everybody's aware of that. So I had a week off late June. Once upon a time, if somebody had said to me, Janet, you're going to have a week off and you're going to be at home all week and you're not going to have anything to do or anywhere to go, I'd have gone, no, don't want that because I love travel. I love going away for weekends. You know, my husband and I will do short haul into Europe for a weekend. We had a lovely holiday in Portugal organised for June, which obviously we didn't go on. Thankfully, we did get the refund. But it was a week that was essential for me. I really needed that week to be at home to recharge my batteries. And actually what it's done for me is enable me to acknowledge and accept and take pleasure in some of the simpler things. So enjoying going out and walking in my local area, seeing sites that probably I haven't looked at for ages because we like jetting away. So actually getting familiar with the Ribble Valley again, and really, really important. And Colin has got a couple of weeks off as of next week, which he's earned. And that's going to be a break for him. So I love a busy life. I love being busy, but you know what? I've become a little bit more chilled through this and accepting of the fact that sometimes you can't change things. I think the most important message that we want to put out this morning, and Simon, if you can move it on for us, is that we are good enough. You know, we beat ourselves up. I think I'm not unique when I say within the health and safety profession, we are always asking ourselves, is what we're doing good enough? We recognise the importance of the guidance and the advice that we're giving. We recognise the importance that we need to do our best to do the roles to the best of our ability. For me, in particular, what I do is never good enough. And that's me. That's my personal attack on myself. I never feel that what I'm doing is good enough. I think now I'm actually accepting, you know what, it is good enough. We've had the HSE visit. I can't change the world. We all know that in the world of health and safety, there's always going to be something that you've got to focus on, something new that you're going to look at. It's a never-ending story. It continues regardless of what is happening. And just to actually take a deep breath and say, do you know what, accept this. Accept that you're good enough. You are doing the job that you need to do in a very challenging time. And I think that's a really important message that I want to send out to everybody who's continuing to work in health and safety at this time. You are good enough. And what you're doing is making a difference. It's really important. Colin, I think you've got a few words to add there.
Yeah, just looking at that, you are good enough. For me, I was confused tired, anxious some of the time. Was I giving the right information? Was I doing my job to the best of my ability? There were times I wish the company had put me on furlough just so I could let someone else deal with all the issues, and that I could avoid it all. Fortunately though, this wasn't on offer. We've come through this together. Janet and I bounced ideas off each other, supported each other, and as she's really good to talk to each other and make sure that we're happy with what we're doing, and we would remain a team, work together, and yes, we are good enough. I believe that.
Yeah, so that's sort of the end of our presentation. I think the next one, if you click on, Simon, is just to open up. Thank you all for listening, and open up and see if there's any questions out there from anybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Janet and Colin, for, well, a really honest and frank insight into the highs and lows of the last few months. I'm sure there's plenty of questions out there. If you've got a question, you can either, I trust you, everyone, to be well behaved, so you can unmute your microphone and just put your question directly to Janet or Colin if you want. I'll start with one if you'll humour me. I think you're probably ahead, because you've worked right the way through and you've been in production right the way through. You're probably ahead of many businesses that have gone back maybe in July or August. Is there a time in human nature? Is it after 2 weeks? Is it after 4 weeks when people start to get complacent and forget about the wiping and forget about the masks and the hygiene? Is there a high alert time that people should be watching out for?
Yeah, I think there was for us, and it was probably about 3 weeks after we started to introduce things, because people were on site and they were working doing their normal jobs. We had less people on the site, and it's human nature to want to gravitate back. So it was about the 3-4 week time. I think we are there again. So it's happening again now, where we are having to remind people again. We've got more people back on site now. For me, I've thought about this quite often. Would it have been easier if we'd have closed down so that we could reopen completely with all the new guidance and the new stuff in place? Potentially, yes, that could have been easier, but that would not necessarily have been right for the business. I think keeping the business open throughout, the fact that we had the NHS stuff was the right thing to do. The business has and is still in survival mode. You know, we are not in a position of sitting here saying, look how great this is. We know that we're all fighting for the customers that we need to continue with the Senator Group. And sadly, we have recently had some redundancies. So 140 of our workplace have been made redundant because we're reliant on people being in office spaces. And until people start to return to those office spaces, they're not going to be ordering desks and chairs. That's probably lower down on their radar. So we're certainly not out of the woods yet. I think, like all behavioural safety, there is a cycle to it where you get compliance, and then it will drop off, and then you need to remind people again. And I think that's typical in any sort of behavioural safety, Simon. So yeah.
Well, I think we're about 3.5 weeks, maybe 4 weeks in at the chamber, so I'll pass that back to Connor and Louise. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've a couple of questions for Janet and I guess the wider group. First one is about your risk assessment. It's not a legal requirement, but it has been recommended that companies make it more widely available, publicise it on websites or whatever. Have you, or has anybody else done that? Just a question.
So I'll answer on behalf of the Senator Group. So yeah, we did. We've shared the risk assessment. It should be on our website. It was, and as we update it, we change it. But what we also did was the risk assessment wasn't just documented by Colin and I at a desk. We had a lot of consultations. So we have a team of safety reps that we use on site. We got them engaged, we talked to them about what we were doing, and they've had the opportunity to consult and be involved with some of the controls that we put in place. So that was really important. So the documenting of the risk assessment actually helped us quantify what we were doing and where the gaps were and what we needed to look at. Really useful, Mark.
I think, yeah, just speaking personally, we as a company have not felt quite brave enough to put ours on the website and make it publicly available. So I don't know whether everybody else has taken that approach. It'd be interesting, the others on the meeting, whether anybody else has made it publicly available.
Look, you know, if anybody wants to have a look at the risk assessment that we've done, then I'm happy to, if you want to share with your email addresses with Simon afterwards, I'm happy to share with you. Again, not from the perspective of saying, look at what we're doing and aren't we wonderful, but from a sharing perspective, there might be something in there that you think, do you know what, we can do it that way. You might even have some comments back for us to say, have you thought about? So more than happy to share what we've done.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that, Janet. Yeah, I'll take you up on that offer, and
Okay,
I might just have a look on your website as well, just to see how you've kind of highlighted it or publicised it. The other question I had, again for yourself and for the rest of the group, was about the HSE visit. Very honest appraisal of yourself there, and you know, I guess most of the group do know that the HSE are out and about in Blackburn at the moment doing visits. I do know of other companies that have had visits. I mean, we've not had one ourselves. Again, just a bit of a straw poll. Has anybody else had a visit? Any other kind of feedback that anybody wants to share from HSE visits would be interesting, useful, I think, for the group, possibly?
Doesn't look like anyone's jumping to volunteer. Do you know, Janet, do you know why you were chosen for the visit? Did they give you any insight into why people are being picked?
No, they didn't. Sorry, excuse me. What they did was, actually, I got a call from one of the HSE reps who we know, who's visited our engineering site previously. He said they were doing these visits and could they attend? So we agreed to let them attend at a time that suited us rather than just coming in ad hoc. And if any of you get that invitation, I would say to do it that way. That wasn't so that we could hide things. It wasn't so that we weren't doing anything behind their backs that we're not doing normally. But the fact that we managed the visit made it helpful. So I think it was just they knew that the Senator Group was a big company in the local area. And we've got sites in Blackburn with Darwin. And we were lucky. We were chosen.
Just to come back to Mark's question, has anyone else had a visit in the last period? No. Any other questions, Mark?
No, those were my two questions.
Fantastic.
I'm just looking at the messaging. Sorry, Nicola, you've got a question.
Yeah, I've got a question. It's just about the future of health and safety with regards to encouraging people now, with people having to work from home over the last 3 or 4 months. That's becoming the new norm for many people who can work from home. What health and safety measures has anybody taken with regards to lone working at home and any, and with general health and safety issues with people working at home now and being removed from a workplace environment and the impact that might have on employees? Has anybody got any thoughts on that, how that might help or considerations they need to make?
Just something from us, again, not that we're not perfect, because we've got some home workers and we've probably been a little bit slow in acknowledging that we've got home workers because we've been busy with the people on site. So we're just in the process of doing our display screen equipment assessments again and gathering information on home workers and supplying them with the stuff that they need. I think one of the reasons why the HSE might have chosen us, Simon, I've forgotten about this, is that we do have, again, a new range. It's not a sales plug, but it is. We've got a new range of home furniture. We've supplied 2,000 desks and chairs into the HSE for their home working people. What we haven't done is currently at the moment supply those into our own people. So we're the Senator Group, we make that, and we need, so we're just starting that journey and giving guidance for our own home employees. But you're right, Nicola, it's probably a neglected aspect of health and safety because we assume that people, when they're in their own homes, are safe, are comfortable. And actually, we all know that the ergonomics for sitting hunched over a laptop or with your laptop on your knee for 8 hours during a day is not good practice and needs to be addressed. And also from a security aspect, of data protection for your IT systems, personal security, and lone working, like you say, that suddenly we've got people who are working at home on their own, who previously would be used to sitting either in an office or in a workplace with a lot of other people around them. So we've been slow on that one, Nicola, and we hold our hands up, but it's something we've started to focus on.
Yeah, well, I think most people have forgotten about that aspect because they've been so consumed with the workplace environment, forgetting that now there's going to be a new workplace environment for many people working from home. So I think it's just new to be on the agenda for health and safety advisors, really, that now there's another dimension of that to their role.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's important to know that we talk to each other. The people working at home would normally have a general conversation in the office about what they've done, where they've been and stuff. But once they're at home, they're just emails. So I think it's important, like Janet did with us lot, team meetings over Teams, having a chat, discussing anything. And so it's important that we remember to keep conversation with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at some of the chat messages that are coming through. So Elaine, Rob, yes, and anybody else, if you want to share my contact details, then happy for that to happen. We are going to share the slides afterwards. So yeah, we'll share those as well.
I'll also signpost, I'll signpost the 22nd of July webinar, which was 2 weeks ago today, was it was HR and health and safety guidance. So it was 50% delivered by HR professional and 50% delivered by a health and safety professional. And there was quite a bit in that on home working. So it might be worth, if that's of interest, you catching up on that. And then the 7th of October webinar, which is, I know it's quite a way off, but that's our next health and safety group one provisionally scheduled. We're looking at the topic for that being exactly this, working from home with some practical insight onto that as well. Someone was just trying to talk then, I talked over them. I'm not sure who it was, so feel free to come back in.
Yeah, I think it was me. So I was going to ask generally, Janet kind of mentioned it a little bit, is some of the things we'd possibly want to keep in terms of health and safety. I'm more thinking from some of the work that I do at the sailing club. So like, for instance, we've used more masthead floats on boats, which we should have probably been using anyway. We've put the ladder back in the rescue boat so people can climb in on their own. And there's just a few other things just to keep things extra safe that I think, well, why weren't we doing this already? And, you know, we need to continue doing this, you know, certainly, you know, obviously use of hand sanitizer. We've had seasonal flu going around for the last God knows how long. And yet, you know, it's only now that we've started to bring in these precautions, and we should continue it long after COVID-19's gone away.
Absolutely. I think the winter challenge of seasonal flu and everything is something that we all know is going to come, and we've all got to face that in terms of we don't want people on site if they're ill. You know, I think every business in the UK, we're a society that presenteeism, or I've got to be in work regardless of the fact that I don't feel very well. So how are we going to manage that? Well, a lot of it we're just going to have to wait and see. But, you know, for me, if people aren't well, then they should be at home. If the option to work at home is there, then we work at home. What we don't want is, you know, the winter vomiting virus. How quickly and how easily is that transmitted? Hopefully the hand washing and sanitising will reduce the impact of those sorts of things this winter as well.
Thanks, Paul. Claire, I'll let you take the last question. Claire Brown, do you want to put your question directly, or do you want me to just read it out?
No, it's fine. I'll put it directly. I just wanted to know how people dealt with just the feeling of being completely overwhelmed. I was furloughed at the end of March because I'd been off because of an operation. So they furloughed me. I have 3 children that weren't at school, so it just made sense for me to be the one that went on furlough. I've only just returned 2 weeks ago. And unfortunately, we've had redundancies, which has meant the staff that I would normally work with no longer work for our company. I am now under quarantine, so we're back at work 2 weeks and I'm back at home again. and I've barely had any handover, so the feeling of being completely overwhelmed with the sheer amount of changes that I haven't been able to catch up on, or staff asking me questions that I really cannot answer. Just wondering how people dealt with that in the early stages, because I wasn't there for the early stages of COVID.
So again, I'll answer that, and if everybody wants to chip in, please do so. It was really challenging, Claire, absolutely, really challenging. There were days that we were going in and we didn't know what we were supposed to be advising. We didn't know which the best way. The only thing that I can say, and I think I mentioned to it in the presentation there, is talking, sharing, knowing that there is a network of people out there that we come across in these chamber meetings, that you talk to and you meet up with, but you actually never follow up those connections that you've said you're going to do. Suddenly they became really important. As I've alluded to, Chris, I've known Chris for a long time and come across him in chamber meetings and Irish meetings. I'd never picked up the phone to Chris or been in contact with him at all prior to lockdown, and he's now become a go-to guy, and we have conversations, and sometimes it's just saying to somebody else, how would you do this? How are you feeling? The conversation, as I say, that Colin had with me, acknowledging that I wasn't in a good place, accepting that it's okay to be there, accepting that it's okay not to know all the answers. And, you know, HR and health and safety professionals have probably been at the brunt of everything that's going on at the moment, and are continuing to be so. Accepting that it's okay every now and again to say to somebody, look, I need some help.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your question, Claire, and thank you, Janet. I think it seems we're 3 minutes over time. I'll wrap up now. Just a reminder then, the 7th of October is the next Health and Safety Forum. So do put that date in your diary. Currently, we're working on a Wednesday 10:30 online only model. However, who knows what government guidance will say. I'd be surprised if we're doing anything different by the 7th of October, but you never know. So do keep an eye on ChamberLIVE.co.uk. Thank you so much to our speakers, to Janet and also to Colin. Really honest and frank insight, which I think is it's great to see a bit of vulnerability, because you know you're getting an honest portrayal. So thank you for what you've done there. Really appreciate it, and thank you for telling the stories.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you also to Tim and our sponsors Intersolia for supporting the Health and Safety Forum. Stay safe, everybody.
I can't wait to be in the same room as everybody again at some point.
Yeah, can't wait. Us too. Us too.
Me too. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Thank
Have
you.
a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.